You look into the void and you see a floating white cube. Perfect. Pristine. Truly a victory for good taste. The design of Psychonauts is a masterclass in mixing the absurd with the eloquent to make something totally unique. The second level of the game, Sasha's Shooting Gallery, showcases how far simplicity can take you and offers a surprisingly deep life lesson for what is undoubtedly the shortest level in the entire game. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to my series where I am taking a deep dive into the many worlds of Psychonauts. A game that has had a huge impact on my life, and one that I think has stood up the test of time surprisingly well. If you haven't seen the first part, you can watch that at the link in the comments or in the playlist on my YouTube page, but for now, we are trekking on from the game's first level, the tutorial Basic Braining, and onto the mind of Sasha Nein, one of my favorite characters in the game, and also another basic tutorial level. I figure I should say that I consider the first 3 levels of Psychonauts to all be tutorial levels to a certain extent, where Basic Braining served as a basic overview of the game, simple movement, a look at the game's collectibles, and the flow of some levels, but certainly not all. Sasha's Shooting Gallery is a deeper look into the game's combat, focusing on, you guessed it, shooting, but also targeting and boss battles and all that jazz. And as a little teaser to the third level, the mind of Agent Mia Vodello, that one focuses on more in-depth movement, and that will very nicely round out the tutorial trilogy. But for today, we are in the highly organized mind of Sasha Nein. After finishing Basic Braining, I mentioned that Sasha gives Raz a button, leading the player to his secret lab in the wilderness, where, before we actually go into Sasha's mind, we take a look inside Raz's mind, using a device called the Brain Tumbler. I've debated with myself a little bit whether Raz's brain deserves its own video or not, but since it's kind of drip-fed to us as players throughout the tutorial sections, I'll talk about our first trip into Raz's mind right now. Sasha Nein hooks Raz into this scary head device, which allows us to visit the collective unconscious, that is, this game's level select, allowing us to revisit minds we've already been to, or in this case, go into our own mind. Immediately inside Raz's brain, we get a look at the circus caravan where he grew up, sitting alone in a dark void. Well, alone aside from a number of figments flying around, and a memory vault, which gives us a look into Raz's escape from the circus that led to where he is now. I already touched on this, so I don't need to go into it again, but for us as players, this is our first look at what happened to Raz growing up and the things he struggles with, and why he's here now. We then are able to enter the circus caravan that looks kind of like static on a TV screen, and upon hitting the walls around us, we come out of an egg into a dark and dank ravine. It's a super cool transition and really plays up the dreamlike nature of the levels in the game. This is a pretty short section, and I want to keep it short because we're supposed to be talking about Sasha Nein right now, but basically we follow a rabbit through the dark ravine until we encounter a big, scary monster that we can't fight, and Sasha pulls Raz out. This serves as a first look into the way that minds are working in Psychonauts, and I don't think I said it in this video yet, but of course I will be spoiling things, but basically, parts of different brains are all colliding together into one. Through the ravine, we encounter meat plants, similar to the ones seen in Basic Braining, and similar to what Lily said she's been seeing in her dreams. Then, we have the rabbit that Raz is chasing, another piece of Oleander's mind which will become more important at the end of the game. Finally, there is the big scary monster that scares Raz out of the brain and leads to Sasha training Raz how to fight. The monster is a subconscious embodiment of Linda, a lungfish, who was experimented on and who is now melding with the psychic world thanks to the huge amount of Psytanium present at the camp. I know that sounds like a lot, and trust me, we will talk more about Linda a little later. I gotta pace myself here, and this video is about Sasha's brain, and we haven't even made it there yet. For now, what is important is that elements of different minds are melding, and we can see different parts popping up throughout the minds in the game, especially minds that are less guarded, which is why when we get to Sasha's mind, finally we don't see any of that influence. But for now, as we leave Raz's mind for the first time, we do see a giant diver's helmet land center screen, a hint to the lungfish's identity, which would be foreshadowing, I guess, if I hadn't just told you what I just said. So if you want to be surprised in like 3 videos, forget everything I said. Okay, now, Finally, with Raz's brain out of the way, for this moment at least, let's talk about Sasha. There's a bit of stuff that happens around the camp before actually entering his brain, but I'm going to talk more about the camp in episode 4. So let's take a deep dive into the man, the myth, the legend that is Sasha Nein. Sasha is kind of a tough nut to crack, literally. Well, not literally, but he has a cold exterior focused on science, but inside he has a lot of delicious meat. Did y'all know that people call the edible part of a nut the meat? Sorry, no more nut references. The point is, Sasha holds a pretty serious, although extremely funny exterior, but inside, once you get to know him, he's very caring and he carries a lot of baggage. Mental baggage, that is. Sorry. Sasha's mind looks like a giant white cube. You know, the one I described in the very first line of this video. Sasha's mind is portrayed as highly organized. He is very good at compartmentalization. This mind is also a really strong example of the outside influences on game design. Pretty much every level in Psychonauts takes inspiration from real-life influences, whether it be movies, like how basic braining is a play on war movies like Saving Private Ryan or Full Metal Jacket, and later levels take inspiration from different art styles. Sasha's shooting gallery is inspired by German Bauhaus art, in its use of shapes and textures on the floating cube itself, as well as the sleek and seamless design of the platforms that you stand on. These designs are more than just unique choices, they actually connect to the character, with some being more on the nose than others. In this case, the Bauhaus design relates to not only the slick style of Sasha, but also the simple fact that he is German. Sometimes it gets deeper than that, connecting to aspects of the character as a whole or to life experience, but this on-the-nose example seems like a pretty good place to fully introduce the concept. In Sasha's mind, he teaches Raz how to focus his psi energy into physical blasts, which he uses to destroy a lamp that he deems tacky.
So tacky. I can't look directly at it, but I control those feelings. Focus them, concentrate, and release. And the world is a better place. Your turn.
He also introduces Raz to one of the game's main enemies, the sensors. The sensors are an important part of the brain, as Sasha tells Raz. They basically move through the brain and stamp out any thoughts that don't belong, including Raz, who technically doesn't belong in minds other than his own. The point of the sensors, though, is to keep people sane, get rid of manias and hallucinations and the like. They are kinda designed to look like little Poindexters with big Coke bottle glasses. I always thought they looked kind of like that one scientist from the Half-Life games. I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but that's what I always saw. Sasha creates this little machine that spawns out sensors for Raz to practice his marksmanship on, which shows Sasha's insane control over his own mind, because as it's shown throughout the game, most of the time sensors roam freely, doing their job, but in Sasha's mind, the sensors are controlled entirely by him, and in this moment spawned at a steady rate by the machine. In order to get his marksmanship badge, Sasha says Raz needs to practice consistently for about 3 weeks. But Raz doesn't have time because his father's coming to get him after he ran away from the circus. So, while Sasha goes off to do his own cool stuff, he leaves Raz to practice and, in turn, mess up his mind. You can, quite literally, sit there forever killing sensors if you want to. I don't know why that would be fun, but it is an option. Or you can do what Raz wants, and you speed up the sensor's spawn rate, in turn speeding up Raz's practice rate. But then Raz breaks the machine, and things get a little haywire. This is the game's first example we get of the impact that the mind has on the person. With the mind overloaded, Sasha's compressed memories come tumbling out, making a mess of the nicely maintained and ordered processes of the mind. As soon as this happens, Sasha drops his cool demeanor, becoming more panicked as the situation worsens. You could think of the minds in Psychonauts like just worlds in a video game, but you also need to realize that there is a cause and effect to the actions in your brains. Sometimes Raz helps fix problems, but in this case, Raz messes up Sasha, and we see the change to Sasha's character immediately. I'm not sure if this was an intentional choice by the writers, or if Sasha's reaction to this is just natural for this kind of situation, but it is a nice effect to see how the mind affects the body. The idea is seen much more in depth in Psychonauts 2, but for now, this is a glimpse at least. As Sasha becomes unwound, different aspects of his brain, which were compressed into the floating space cube, come popping out, occasionally relating to aspects of his life, other times just serving as obstacles for Raz to cross. Again, as this level basically serves the purpose of an in-universe combat tutorial, most of the level is made up of traversing obstacles, fighting sensors and other enemies, and then locking onto targets which can help reseal Sasha's mind to its ordered peace. As Raz closes off the various outlets in Sasha's mind, new areas pop up and take their place. There are two locations in particular that I want to make note of. The first is the very first section that pops up: a bed. The bed reflects on Sasha's childhood, as evidenced by the toy blocks and baby bottles around the area. If you go on the Psychonauts wiki, which can be useful for cursory information, they call the area the crib, which I can kinda see, but I think it looks more like a bed, so I happen to disagree about that small fact, but the meaning of the area remains the same. To really emphasize the meaning of the bed, or the memories that pop out as we mess up Sasha's mind, the first memory vault is smack dab in the middle of the bed. This memory vault is one of the sadder pieces of the game, showing the death of Sasha's mother from a first-person perspective. We're introduced to Sasha's loving mother, who he seems to adore as she cares for him as a baby, with his father looming in the background of some of the frames. Sasha's father looks slightly menacing in these frames, but I don't think he was a bad father. It's either just an artistic choice, or it kind of shows the way that Sasha perceived him as a child. We then see Sasha's mother on her deathbed, with his father crying over her. Then we see his father crying over her grave. And finally, his father crying while Sasha is in the crib. What's beautiful and incredibly tragic about this to me is that it's presented from the view of Sasha, a literal infant at the time, who is witnessing the events, but probably not at an age where he can comprehend or even really empathize with what's happening. Instead, he just bears witness to his father's reaction to the events, which is truly tragic to see. In the final frames, we also can see the toy blocks, which are also found in that area of Sasha's shooting gallery, which brings us full circle. Scattered around this area and subsequent sections of Sasha's mind are, of course, plenty of figments, many of which represent this time in Sasha's life as well as later sections. This includes figments of his mother and father, as well as elements relating to cobbling, which will come into play momentarily, and by momentarily I mean right now. The third section that pops out of Sasha's mind is made up of towers of shoeboxes, as well as slides made of measuring tapes. And taken at face value, this could just be a design choice, but if you choose to open the memory vault in this location, it's all explained. This memory vault reveals that Sasha's father was a cobbler, a shoemaker if you aren't familiar with the term, mainly because I genuinely don't know the last time I saw an actual cobbler anywhere. We learn that Sasha worked for his father as a kid/young teen, making shoes, hence the shoeboxes, and we also see Sasha asking about his mother, but his father refuses to speak about her, obviously still grieving her death even after a number of years. In that moment, Sasha uses his psychic powers to read his father's mind, seeing images of his mother from his perspective, including her as a mother, an angel, and then finally his mother and father having sex. Of course, not that explicitly, in a bit of a comical moment actually, coming out of something quite sad and beautiful. After seeing that image of his parents, Sasha leaves home for good. Psychonauts is wonderful at blending humor and drama together in a way that doesn't feel over the top or disrespectful of the sadness. It more feels like the game uses humor to release tension, or even as a coping mechanism sometimes. The other two sections of Sasha's mind aren't too representative of much, at least not as much you can read into, but the second section has these spinning plate-looking things on poles, and at first I was very, very confused. In fact, I even wrote this in the script that I didn't know what it was, and then I went and revisited Sasha's mind to record some extra footage, and I realized that it is supposed to look like a baby mobile, like the kind of thing you hang above a baby's bed, so that's what the second section is. The fourth and final section that Raz needs needs to seal is a pretty menacing looking structure made of metal and spouting flames. The wiki jumps to some conclusions here, but that's what fandom wikis are known for, so it's not unexpected. This is just another reason to make sure you take everything you read on those wikis with a grain of salt and come to your own conclusions. To me, I have no read on this location, but it's also the shortest area with only one valve to seal off before the area is finally shut away, restoring Sasha's mind to its perfect cubicle state. Well, perfect except for the fact that Raz is going to learn a tough lesson. After sealing off the final valve, Sasha lectures Raz about the dangers of messing around in brains and letting too many sensors loose. But specifically, Raz thinks the takeaway is the importance of maintaining full control of one's brain, which Sasha says is wrong because that actually causes things to just build up instead until they explode, which is when we realize, Raz completely shut off the valves, causing the sensors to build up in Sasha's mind and unleash the Mega Sensor. The Mega Sensor is the first boss in Psychonauts, and it makes sense to have it at the end of the combat tutorial, seeing as we just learned about the importance of locking on and shooting. Although I will say this boss is quite annoying, especially if you don't know how it works. The boss itself is pretty simple except for its main gimmick, which is the fact that you need to close more valves around the floating space cube to stop the Mega Sensor from infinitely healing. Which sounds easy in practice. The problem is the fact that basically every side of the cube looks the same, and you can end up wandering around the cube in circles. Squares? Looking for the valves. I've done this battle probably 50 times in my life, so I know how to deal with it. That being said, though, I just watched my girlfriend do it for the first time a little while back, and I could see this boss being really frustrating if you don't have a path mapped out in your brain. Once the valves are off, you just have to shoot and hit your way to victory, dodging the Mega Sensor's big stamp and using occasionally spawning normal sensors to regain ammo and health. Not too terrible. The Mega Sensor follows that same theme of the level, which to me reads as a lesson in controlling your thoughts and feelings. Don't hold it in, lest it build up and explode, but also don't let it all out. It's a pretty on-the-nose level, but it represents some fundamental psychology, the kind of stuff that I learned in my high school psych classes. I love Sasha Nein. He is one of my favorite characters in the Psychonauts series, and this look inside his brain is a key factor in why I love the game itself. His dry humor combined with the real-life cause and effects drew me in as a kid when I was playing this game for the first time, and it stuck with me after all these years. In total, Sasha's shooting gallery has 69 figments, nice, the fewest of any level in the game by the way. There are the standard 5 pieces of emotional baggage, 5 mental cobwebs to collect, and then there are also the 2 memory vaults that we already collected. While definitely the shortest level, I think that the world development given by Sasha's mind makes it one of the better levels in the game. Sometimes simplicity is key, especially in the early game. They can save the big out there ideas for later, and trust me, they do. So I'm going to give Sasha's shooting gallery a B on my overall ranking. In the next video, we're going to be talking about Agent Mia Vidello's awesome disco party, the third and final tutorial level in the game, and also setting ourselves up for success as we dive into what I consider to be the deep end of Psychonauts. But until then, let's say goodbye to Sasha, and in his own words,
No, here's your merit badge. Let us never speak of this again.
thank you so much for watching. If this was the first video you saw in this series and you enjoyed it, then go back and watch the first episode and keep an eye out because part 3 is coming hopefully in the near future. If you want to keep up with the stuff I make, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. You can find me elsewhere online on my website. My cat Dallas just jumped up on my lap here. Ow, he's got claws in my back. Yeah, you can find me online on my website or over on Twitch a couple times a week, but until the next video, y'all, thank you so much again, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace.